I already know I am on thin ice when I begin a sermon with an example from golf. My game is so marginal at best, but it may help put the reading from Deuteronomy in a context that makes it just a little bit more intelligible. The game of golf is, of course, a pretty challenging one, and it really gets especially tricky as you approach the green. If you're 100 yards from the pin, which is that flag marking the hole, you normally grab a club out of the bag like a wedge. That's designed to hit the ball really high so that it comes down and lands with a thud right next to the hole, and then you just tap it in. And if you're about 175 yards away, you take what's known as an iron. And you again hit the ball in such a way, but this time maybe to where it hits the green and then rolls a little way and winds up next to the pin. In other words, based on what is in front of you, you choose a club that hopefully will get the ball from where you stand next to the hole. That's the whole object of the game. Now, if you're really good at this game, and you get closer to the hole, you're maybe going to choose from a multiplicity of wedges in your bag of 14 clubs, each which has a club at a little bit different angle, called loft, knowing that then if you hit it just right, you can finesse the ball and it's going to land on the green and everything's going to work out well. And if you're really, really, really good at the game, you consider not just the distance, but you consider the slope of the green. You consider what the wind's going to do it. You see golfers, they pick some grass up and they throw it in the air and it goes drifting off. I do the same thing, but I don't know why I'm doing it. It just looks the way you're supposed to do it. You consider the sun and where it is in relation to the green, because that affects the grain of the grass. And that's going to affect how fast the ball moves towards the hole. And if you're really, really, really good at it, you may even take into account the gravitational pull of the moon, because this is going to all affect your shot. In short, you always have a choice at how you're going to play each shot in a round of golf. And it can require considerable thought, it can desire direction, and an art based on never-ending practice. It's sort of like what Moses was telling the people in that section from Deuteronomy that we had this morning. Here's what's in front of you. You are about ready to enter the promised land. That's the green way up there. You see it? The tools you have enabling you to get there are commandments and their decrees and their ordinances that have been given to you. Those are the clubs in your bag, says Moses. Employ them the right way, and you can love the Lord, you can obey God, and you can hold fast. That's the object of it all. And by and large, we have been trying to employ this advice over the last 3,000 years, with some success and with some failure. Some have followed commandments, decrees, and ordinances better than others. St. Paul thought he had done a pretty good job with all of that prior to his conversion, or his calling, as some people put it. And yet you then hear him in Romans say that he does the very thing that he wishes he didn't do, and he doesn't do the stuff that he wishes he did do. So for Paul, it was a struggle, and all of us find it a struggle. You and I know that we have our ups and we have our downs dealing with these ordinances and these decrees and these commandments, these directions. And we give it our best, and we fall down, and we get back up. Sometimes we go for a while swimmingly, and then we trip, bruising our nose and bruising our spiritual acumen. Well, those of us who golf know this as daily life. We look at our scorecard at the end of 18 holes, rejoicing at the birdies and pars, which for those who don't golf are really good scores on each hole. And we rejoice even at the well-fought-for bogeys. We were in trouble and we got out of it. And then we lament the scores which reflect the holes in which the balls were clubbed into the lake, or into the trees, or past those really pesky little white out-of-bounds stakes that are over there that cost you a stroke. We lament the shots that we hit into the foursome in front of us that not only unnerved them but also us. And maybe once on the green we lament those 3 and 4 putts to put it in the hole. Scripture is just filled with stories of peoples whose lives read like the game of golf. Man, they get off to a great start and then they kind of fizzle out. Or they start out a mess and then somehow they get fairly good for the rest of the journey. In golf, we see that. We know it. We're used to it. There's another thing that you find in this particular game, as you find in life. It's something called a trap. In this game, a trap is a fairly deep indentation in the ground, and that ground is then filled with sand. And the rule of thumb is you do not want to land the ball into that. Some traps are as large as this room and bigger. Some of them about the size of this chancel. You just don't want to get there because the shot out for normal people is kind of uncontrollable. You're lucky if you get it out in one whap of the ball. And then you find it and hopefully rectify the problem that you have created. There's even a bigger trap than that, however, and this is the really serious one. It is found when you have the round of a lifetime, and you think the rest of your game for the remainder of your days on earth is going to be of the same caliber. That moment for me was June 30th, 2006. And I know that because I have the signed scorecard from the rest of the foursome tacked up on the wall in my study. My God, I'm good, I thought. Wow, surprisingly good. And that is what landed me in this insurmountable trap because I have not had a game since within 11 strokes of what I shot that day. Man, like others with usual scores that are just nothing to write home about. The entrapment is that every once in a while we really do think we can pull it off. This excellence based on a grand moment of achievement, and then somehow we can maintain that for the rest of our lives. But it doesn't work out that way in golf, and it doesn't work out that way in choosing life, regardless of how hard you might work at it. We never seem to be able to engage in a way that warrants achieving on our merits a right relationship with the Lord. We just can't pull it off consistently. And yet, it is the game of golf that reminds us that in the final analysis, there is always good news, really good news. One funny but really important thing about golf is the existence of something called a handicap. And the way that works is that people like me collect our scorecards on a particular course for a while, and then as we think it would just be merciful to drag our clubs down to Pacific Steel and recycling and just get rid of the things before they cause any more misery, we find ourselves faced with a system that says, by grace and grace alone, we are going to make it possible for you to rest in the same territory as the best that there is. And here's the deal. You take the average of your last 5 scores minus the course rating multiplied by 113 and then divide by the course slope, and that will give you hope. It will give you your handicap. Well, like in theology, golf is sort of mystical as well, and that's that whole formula I just recited. Today, it's all done by a computer in the pro shop. My handicap is 21. So at the end of each day, when I basically subtract 21 from my score, I actually look pretty good. It's a gift that does that, and it's all grace. And for serious golfers, having a handicap is not an option from which you can opt out. That's not the way the game's played. This enjoyment of the gift is an integral part of the game. In fact, it's such a part of the game, it is actually foundational to it. At the end of the day, even folks like me have to give in to the fact that we are okay. and there's nothing left but to say, I'm going to take the gift. Yeah, I shot a 93, minus 21, gives me a 72. Wow! That's incredible. How about that? In one of the greatest sermons that has ever been given, I think around 75 years ago, theologian Paul Tillich wrote the following. He said, you are accepted. You are accepted by that which is greater than you. Simply accept the fact that you are accepted. If that happens to us, we experience grace. After such an experience, we may not be better than before, and we may not believe it more than before. But everything is transformed. In that moment, grace conquers sin, and reconciliation bridges the gulf of estrangement. And nothing is demanded of this experience, nothing but acceptance. Just acceptance. Didn't shoot a 93, shot a 71. Acceptance. That can be quite a challenge. Let me just say one last thing about all this, which maybe speaks to that challenge to accepting the fact that you are accepted and how hard that can actually be. In this morning's reading from the Gospel according to Luke, Jesus asked us to give up our possessions in order to be a disciple of His. In what was harsh and maybe even awful language about hating, He even told us to finally rid ourselves of the usual sense of relationships. But remember, relationships in those first century Palestinian times were always seen as property-based. You basically owned your relatives. And possession was a sign of favor, even divine favor. So to take up discipleship, you had to rid yourself of all these trophies, of all these attaboys you had collected, including, yes, even that scorecard that's attached to the study wall. And realize that it's all grace. It's all that His love has been freely given to you that actually makes the totality of your day. To really become a disciple, you have to accept the fact that you are accepted. And at the end of the day, when you and I turn in our scorecards and they have all these ups and downs over them, moments of brilliance, moments of utter failure, God's grace is going to recalculate the whole thing like the computer in the pro shop, and out is going to come the message, you are the beloved, and you are extraordinarily valuable to the cause. That's what you hear. In short, as you and I often are way too distracted to choose life, God, through the resurrection of Christ, chooses life for you. You can't get away from it. That's the promise. And all we are asked to do is to accept the gift of it all and then spread the news. And then maybe having that under our belt, we can go out and play golf just for the fun of it. Amen.